All right. Well, good morning, and our apologies for the brief delay there. Thank you, everybody, for the patience. My name is Joe Cressy. I have the privilege of working with a number of colleagues on this committee, and to welcome to the public session of today's hybrid meeting, which is taking place in person at City Hall and virtually via WebEx. Let me begin with an acknowledgement that the land each of us is on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also want to acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. There are 3 reports being brought forward for this public meeting. So the public session is first. And we do have a deputant registered for 3 items on that session. So let's dive right in. And so first, just a declaration on conflict of interest. Any members of the committee have a conflict, and could you declare so in the nature of it if you do? No? Okay. So I'll seek to move approval of the public agenda items. And so I'll just note in terms of on the public agenda that item 6, 7, and 8 are being held. We have a deputant registered for each of those. So I think that's actually all of the items. So I'll ask for a motion to adopt the well, we're not adopting any of the recommendations. They're all being held. So let's keep moving. Could I have a motion to confirm the meetings from the meeting of September 21st? Moved by Uba, thank you. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That carried. And business arising, item 5, business arising from the in-camera meetings and action items. Just want to see if anybody had that item to hold. Okay, seeing none, I'm happy to move that. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That carries. Okay, so Let's dive right in. We have 3 items on the agenda. That's items 6, 7, and 8 on I was looking at, that's item, yes, 6, 7, and 8. So the People and Culture Division update, the item 7, the 2023 Strategic Communications Plan update, and number 8, the City Council directions requiring attention. So item 6, People and Culture Division update. I believe we have a deputant on this item, if they can bring up on the screen. Do we have? Ms. Tomlinson's in the room. Oh, Ms. Tomlinson's in the room. Oh, okay. So welcome, Anne-Marie. You'll have 5 minutes. Thank you for joining us in person. And I just ask, if possible, just as a reminder for deputants today, if we can make sure the deputation's on the topic of the item in front of us. So on this first item, People and Culture Division update. Anne-Marie, welcome.
Well, thank you. Good morning, everyone. That's in City Hall and also on the screen. So today I'd like to talk about certain issues that I find. I'm looking at the policies and the improvements and strategies in regards to when it comes to training, equality, when it comes to Toronto Community Housing staff, and also their tenants. They have like 60,000 tenants across the corporation. And I feel when it comes to certain things like unit inspection and the way staff deals with tenants in regards to equality, I feel that we should be treated with respect. I feel that we should be treated in a manner that fosters strong voices. Toronto Community Housing speaks to that they try to support tenants that have strong voices, but in the reality of it all, and before I conclude, may my thoughts be registered in the minutes, but that's not really so. The tenants definitely get a hard time when they speak against certain rights that are being infringed upon. And I feel that there definitely has to be some overhaul, some changes when it comes to their policies and procedures. Like I said, there's amazing, amazing people that are at Toronto Community Housing, but we do have some individual persons that are not necessarily adhering to these policies and procedures when it comes to your human rights, right? Everyone should be treated fairly. Everyone should be treated equally, and have the level of respect that fosters trust. When there's a breach of trust, it's very hard to communicate, to deal with those individual persons when you no longer have trust in those individual persons, staff persons that are coming to your home on a daily basis, because they're really not following these policies and procedures that Toronto Community Housing is fostering in the item 6. So I'm asking if somehow, some way, if we can definitely change or have training that identify key issues of concerns when it comes to our community and the way that they deal with us, and not infringing upon our rights, especially when it comes to disability. There are tenants that have disability and staff knowingly know that they have the disability, yet they tell you no options in regards to how we can get that support, what services can be implemented for us. And I find that difficult. Even when you say these are the processes and procedures that are in place, I'm calling upon them to be enacted, it still doesn't get done. That's very concerning that it doesn't get done, and they know these policies, right? And they're infringing upon your human rights. They're infringing upon your equality rights. And not much gets done about it, even when you speak out. So there needs to be some clauses or sub-clauses in documents that say, you must be accountable. Toronto Community Housing is saying you are accountable for actions that is not according to these standards and policies. How are they going to be accounted for? What is in place that says when you do A, this is how we're going to make you accountable? Because when we don't do that, they still get up on a daily basis and breach those rights. And I feel if those rights are constantly being breached, how are we going to make sure that the silent voices are being heard? Because there's so many silent voices that are not being heard. They're not being documented. Additionally, if it could be in your newsletters on how we can be a part of the advisory board, because a lot of tenants do not know of certain things or committees that are going on and how we can apply for them before the deadline ends. So if we can have some updates in regards to that, that would be amazing. Do I have some more time left? I'm monitoring myself.
Yeah, you have about a minute left.
2 seconds. Okay, great. I have a cough. Right. So just to conclude, right, the most important thing also is when we're talking about youth. Youth are suffering in silence because as we talk about culture, every single culture deals with stress. They deal with grouping in everybody's community. When we have events, when they have sorrow, when they have issues, according to their culture, they will deal with those situations according to how they were raised and how they were growing up, right? Especially when it comes to death. So we definitely have to have a piece in the human rights portion of Toronto Community Housing and how to deal with youth. Thank you so much. I appreciate the time.
Anne-Marie, before you leave, if I may, Mr. Chair, you talked about issues of disability. I'm trying to just get a sense of what you mean that staff are breaching people's equality and human rights. Can you give us another couple of examples? How are people with disabilities' rights being breached, or any other equity-seeking groups that you talked about?
Yeah, so I'll give you an example. I'll be, a little puppet here. So I was in a car accident. I had my lower lumbar spine injury. I reported it to staff at Roundtree. They all knew about it. Then I reported it also at Wilson. No one did anything about it until the amazing Nadia helped me to get documents in place that I can get some supports in regards to my lower lumbar spine injury, right? That's what the MRI revealed. Additionally, I had to modify my space in regards to how I could live, because I now have to live on the main floor of my home. Going up and down the stairs horrible, right? So I got harassed in regards to modifying my space. It didn't cost Toronto Community Housing a lot of money to modify my space, right? It was convenient for me, right? If I had folded my clothing sitting on the chair in my living room, they gave me a problem in regards to that, right? I said I'm not moving it because I have my right, to make things easier for me, right? It's just like someone with a wheelchair. If you're in a wheelchair, you have to accommodate that wheelchair person, right? Wider spaces, how they're gonna get up and down the stairs, right? Those things have to be done. Could be costly, but when it comes to a spinal injury, it's about mobility. So when it's about mobility, it's about, okay, let me stay on the first level because up and down the stairs, some of the climax, especially the basement stairs, it's a bit deep. So what you try to do is go up and down the stairs as less as possible. It would be the beneficial point. So that's one aspect of how those rights were breached, right? For almost 2 years. Right? Repeatedly saying, this is what my injury is. How can I get help and assistance? Nothing, deaf ears, right? Additionally, there are other tenants, right, that have mobility issues. Like for instance, in our community, we need a ramp because the youth, there are 2 youth that are in wheelchairs. They cannot get up and down those stairs for wheel-trans. They have to go all the way around through the basketball court to actually get around to access for the wheel-trans, right? So I requested for that ramp.
Thank you for those examples.
Thank you.
Have a good rest of the day.
Yes, I will.
Thank you for coming.
So much. Yeah.
I just have a quick question, sorry.
And
Keeping at Anne Marie.
Oh, there's another question?
yeah, and just members of the committee, just as a reminder, and absolutely, but back to you in a moment. The item we're dealing with, this is the People and Culture Division update. Just in terms of where, the matters we're dealing with following this deputation.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Anne Marie, for your deputation and explaining. You mentioned different things, treatment with respect, build trust, but I'm more interested in the trainings that you mentioned. Is it everything? Is it about how to, navigate the system? Is it, you mentioned also youth and when they have death in their families? Is it a culture piece? Can you speak to that?
So are you saying in regards to how the staff could be trained in regards to those pieces, the second question that you asked, in regards to the equality?
The training that you mentioned.
Pardon?
What type of trainings do you want to see, basically?
Well, what kind of training would be good?
Tenants that.
So one training that would be good is hands-on workshops, right? Hands-on, like when I was at Humber College, I forgot to say I'm a proud graduate of Humber College Lakeshore. So what we did in our classes, we did live scenarios that gives hands-on experience in regards to things that could occur when it comes to our voices not being heard or any type of disrespect, right? It's just like when something happens, you act out the crime scene or you act out the action that is occurring. And then when you're acting out the action that is occurring, then we come up with solutions to try to find out how best to correct these incorrect actions that is occurring, if you understand what I mean. Like give live examples of it. Like for instance, I'll give you one quick example. Like an individual, A person comes into the room, B person is in the room, disrespectful conversation is going on. Then people that are sitting around would then come up with a solution after they have that demonstration. How can we best correct this situation that would be occurring in front of us, right? Everyone would come up with a solution on how best to address it and then implement those changes.
So training for staff, basically, yeah, using case studies and
and that would be good.
Approaches like fishbowl, like it just described.
Yes, that would be
Thank you.
good. That would be good.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So bringing it into committee, so we have the item People and Culture Division update. There aren't formal recommendations. This is an update on the work of the division. Just want to open it up if there are members from the team who have any questions. I don't know, Barbara, if you wanted to say a few words on it in advance.
Thank you, Chair Cressy. So this report provides information for the committee and really is intended to give you an overview and update of the work of the People and Culture Division. In this document, we talk specifically about our strategic plan, the goals that are identified in the plan, the outcomes that we strive to achieve in implementing the plan, and then specifically have gone into detail into some of the key areas of focus. And so what you see through the document is we talk about the priorities in terms of building Toronto community's culture. We talked about our focus on equity, diversity, inclusion initiatives, training, leadership development. Those are core things that are priority areas of focus for our division. But I am happy to answer any specific questions that committee members may have.
Thank you, Barbara.
Thanks for that. One of the questions I've always had was how the Center for Black People and HR work together, including on complaints, for example, as we just heard from one of the tenants. What's the role of both of those organizations, and how do you come together to work on issues?
Through the chair. So I'm happy to say that our teams work very closely together. And in particular, one of the key, well, in developing our equity, diversity, inclusion strategy, which is the focus of the work of our senior equity development inclusion consultant, Jamie Kramer, who's also on this call, we worked in close collaboration with the center to develop a strategy where we're aligned in terms of the approach that we want to take, the priorities that we have, the challenges that we're trying to tackle. When we undertake policy review to identify whether or not there are systemic barriers in our policies that we need to change, it's a consultative relationship. So we share the work that we're doing on, we consult with each other, and we problem solve together. In terms of complaints, I think this is going to be a very high-level response, but I think it depends on the nature of the complaint. So there are many different avenues that a complaint can come forward in the organization, depending on the nature of the complaint. And it may come in directly to HR, it may come into the center, it may come into operations or another division within the organization. And it will be the role of, so depending on where it's been received, we try to determine the appropriate avenue. If we believe that a complaint in particular is about in relation to something brought forward by a Black employee or a Black tenant, for example, then we're going to ensure that there is collaboration between center staff who have that subject matter expertise and the relevant professional staff within the organization. So whether that's within HR or within operations, we're going to work together to address it and ensure that we are, in the case of CABR, implementing that CABR lens to the situation.
How are tenants kept informed about these processes? I heard in Anne-Marie's discussion with us that there needs to be information coming out through newsletters so people know what the processes are, what tenants can and should be doing in order to get their complaints heard. How do you promote? So how do people know what the role of the center is versus your role versus the other committees dealing with issues of anti-racism and equity?
Through the chair, I think my starting point is to say that when it comes to tenant resolution, those issues don't come to People and Culture Division, right? That is, and so I'm wondering if perhaps, but that being said, there are on the TCHC website, there are stated processes for various types of complaints or concerns that a tenant may have that would guide them and direct them to how to bring it forward. It isn't going to come, in the case of People and Culture, it's not going to come from a tenant directly to People and Culture because our primary target audience is the workforce, right? I think that is different for the center. I don't know if Barry is on the call right now. We do know, of course, that the center receives complaints from both staff as well as tenants. So that would be a different process that's available to them.
I might, sorry, I might also add that I believe the board is aware that as an organization, we have undertaken a review in terms of a specific type of complaint, of our process to address tenant human rights complaints. And we are in the process at present of implementing our interim process, and we've been engaging with strategic communications staff within TCHC as to how best to communicate the new processes that will be available for tenants who have a complaint that they believe impacts their human rights. And we'll be using tools like the tenant publication loop, the website, and postering within buildings to let folks know when that process is rolling out. We're currently also discussing with learning and organizational development staff within the People and Culture Division, training exercises for staff so that they can better identify a human rights-based complaint when they see one, and direct it to the appropriate resources within the organization so tenants hear less, I don't know how to deal with this from our staff. So that work is underway, and I anticipate that shortly both the board and tenants will see further communications about the steps we're taking to address those issues.
Very good. As you know, the board is very much concerned, given what just recently happened with the Ombudsman's office.
Thank you, Debbie. Ziva, I see your virtual hand up.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I do want to just chime in here. I did read the report. I think that we are on a good track on an executive level of trying to address some of the concerns that tenants are voicing on the ground level. I guess my question is does TCHC have an opportunity for tenants to have a pathway of employment within the organization to really help with fostering a sense of trust with the organization and also economic opportunities that way?
Through the chair, just to make sure I'm answering the correct question is, do we offer employment opportunities for tenants?
Yeah, because one of the biggest issues that was raised by the deputant was that a lot of the employees that are coming in the homes don't really respect or understand. So if we do find employment within communities itself, do you feel like that would effectively help address some of the situations that we're seeing on the ground level?
Thank you. Through the chair. So two separate questions. Firstly, in terms of, we do have some various programs in the organization where opportunities are made available to tenants, or they're made aware of those opportunities. And I see that my colleague Nadia Gavea has come on, and she may want to speak specifically to what some of those initiatives are. But to answer the second part of your question in terms of ensuring that staff have an appreciation of what the tenants are experiencing and what their needs are and how that translates into our ability to address. I think that happens, and certainly in the People and Culture Division, that happens through our close relationship, for example, with our colleagues in operations. So the operations staff, frontline on the ground, interacting with the tenants, have an appreciation of what the needs are, what the concerns are, and those get channeled back to us to identify how best for us as an organization to support them. So as was pointed out earlier, one of those examples would be that we develop training programs for our staff to help our staff better understand, appreciate, ask questions, understand what the tenant needs are, and make sure that we've got the right process programs in place. So the education piece is a very important mechanism that People and Culture works closely with operations to make sure that we are training, educating our staff so that they have an appreciation of what the tenant needs are. Nadia, I didn't know if you wanted to add anything on the employment-related opportunities.
Absolutely. Thank you, Barbara. And through the chair, thank you for the question, Director Ferreira. We do have a manager of community economic development that focuses on employment opportunities and entry points for TCHC tenants. Specifically, we have programs that are targeted at hiring TCHC tenants. What we found to be a gap in actually engaging with tenant populations would be entry-level positions to start, as an opportunity to kind of work through the organization, specifically around the building level roles. We are working on a part-time cleaner program that will allow young people to transition into full-time employment. We have our Youth Works program. We also have internships to allow young people to transition into more permanent employment opportunities. We also screen in where possible. So one of the questions I believe on our entry form is whether somebody has experience with our communities, either through lived experience or working in our communities. So that is something that we prioritize in roles where it's relevant. Also through the hiring process for all tenant-facing roles, there are questions where we try to get individuals who have more experience working with tenants and in our communities so that we have the appropriate representation. So I think there's a few different avenues. I think where there may be an opportunity future state is looking at promoting all job opportunities in a more deliberate way, I want to say. So that's something that I think that I can take back and work with my team on. So not just the entry level roles or the roles that are targeted at TCHC tenants, but all of our roles. So happy to work with the HR team and my economic development team to look at that.
Thank you, Nadia, for that. I have one more question in regards to training, because I know that we speak a lot about training the staff, equipping them with the information and education to address some of the issues that are happening on the ground level. I think I'm more concerned about like what data or metric systems are we using to verify its effectiveness, and do you? I guess that's the question. What are we using to verify how effective the trainings are? And is it making an impact on a day-to-day when TCHC staff is dealing with residents?
Thank you for the question, Director Ferreira. So in our training programs, we build in evaluation process. We also build in other mechanisms to work directly with the client divisions that we are serving when we create a program, when we develop, and when we implement programs. So there are measures and ways for us to assess whether or not we are, for example, if we are training on a particular policy, that we see implementation of a policy and compliance, for example. That would be a mechanism for us to assess. So I think it's a general question, but definitely it depends on the nature of the training that we're providing. We are always looking to build in mechanisms to ensure that we are achieving the outcomes that we anticipate through that approach. How we evaluate will depend on the particular training program.
Thank you, Barbara.
Yeah, and just one follow-up, Ziva, thanks for raising the data question. This is for Nadia more so, and probably the person responsible for development. We had some concerns over the years that we're not tracking how TCHC tenants are engaged in our development in terms of employment, training, and those kinds of things, and whether or not we're keeping data on how it is that we're engaging tenants, whether or not it's in Lawrence Park or Regent Park or any of our other community development projects.
So through the chair, happy to speak to that. I don't see my colleague Jessica Hawes on the call. So I will speak from the operations perspective and what I know of the program. There are tracking tools that specifically look at tenants, tenant employment, duration of employment. The other area of interest, particularly in revet communities that we've also identified, is sometimes a tenant may be a tenant when they get the position, but maybe they transition to another home environment. And so does that still count? So these are all conversations that I know Jessica and her team, the community engagement team, are looking at, but there are tracked throughout the duration of their employment with the organization.
Will you be reporting that out to the board at some point?
So, and I think, as Nadia was saying, it's a lot of the Revite-specific engagement opportunities is primarily delivered through the development side. And so I don't know, Nadia, if, like,
but Nadia in her role oversees that, right?
No, it's a separate role. Jessica?
Yeah, so through the chair, that work, goes through Jessica Hawes and the Chief Development Officer.
That's what I was just saying, in terms of the
Okay, I
question.
see. Yeah,
So Jessica would be reporting out separately from Nadia on that.
No, that's fine. I just want to know that if anyone will be reporting out to the board at some point on this data. We haven't seen it in at least 2 years. And the last time we saw it, it was incomplete and felt just pulled together. So I was hoping that the lesson from that was that we needed to have a comprehensive process in place to collect the data and to be able to report out on the data in terms of which tenants, how long are they employed, are they in training, those kinds of things. Okay.
So we can take that as an action item from the report, subject to, Nadia, I don't know if you're able to address the question at this point in time. Follow up with we can follow up with Chief Development Officer and report back either through this committee, presumably through this committee, on what measures we have in place to monitor those issues.
Thank you.
And then just on mine, I just wanted to touch on just, Barbara, in going through the report, and this I'm sure is a piece that's woven through, but I was curious is, you know, outlined the 5 goals, the various actions underway within people and culture, how the hybrid work model is coming into play in building workplace culture, addressing morale, leadership development. It sort of comes into play, the remote versus in-person model across all the 5 goals. What you're seeing, every organization is dealing with this. So I was curious on that piece.
Thank you. It's a great question, Chair Cressy. So,
can I to everybody, Joe is fine. Members of our committee and staff, Joe is fine. I don't like the chair title, so Joe is fine.
Thank you. So thank you for the question. I will start with saying that while we have a hybrid model implemented at Toronto Community Housing, only 30% of the positions in the organization are actually hybrid eligible. So we did a fulsome assessment when we introduced the policy to determine which roles lend themselves. And of course, given the nature of our organization and the business that we're in, frontline service delivery to tenants only happens in person for the most part. But for those jobs, and it would be largely the corporate type functions, we did adopt a hybrid policy like many, if not most organizations. And so it's now been 1.5 years that we have that model in place. And we've implemented it with quite a bit of flexibility, giving discretion to different leaders to determine what works best for their teams. And that was based on fulsome discussion at both the executive level and with people leaders. Some, have different needs. IT has a different schedule that they implement with their team, different than what I do in people and culture, and different than what Darryl will do with the legal services team. We are in the process right now of doing an evaluation. This is something that my team is carrying out, that we're going to come back to the executive team level as a starting point to have the discussion and do a bit of that qualitative analysis in terms of what do we think is working well. Are we happy? Because it makes good sense with any policy that you have to periodically revisit and say, how is it working for us? Do we need to make tweaks? Overall, the feedback that we're hearing from those that are in hybrid eligible jobs is that they're very happy, that they appreciate the flexibility that exists. And I think one of the things that we've been able to do is recognize that we know working remotely, for example, isn't everybody's cup of tea, although I would say probably more people than not do like it. But for those who have said, I really don't want to work at home, it's too isolating, I want to be out, or, those people come into the office all the time. And that's one of the great things about the model, is that we have this flexibility.
So just a reflection is, because every organization and every sector is dealing with this in real time, right? From a talent recruitment and retention, but also to a workplace culture, morale, personnel development. For those 30% who are not frontline facing, the hybrid optional, as that assessment, just very interesting to continue to learn. As all, in my institutional environment at George Brown, we're learning on this and struggling. And so we're all learning from each other. So just as that evaluation completes, not necessarily as a board reporting item, but perhaps as part of one of the upcoming, would love to hear more because you're already thinking through it.
Absolutely, and happy to bring that back.
And it'll be great to get a sense of the other teams that are public-facing, what's their sense of their colleagues who are able to be on the hybrid model when they're not, because for us, at my organization, that's the biggest thing, and we do it based on geography, right? So the GTA folks are on a hybrid model. The folks outside of the GTA don't have to come in at all, and you can imagine what that does in terms of culture.
Yeah. Well, keep us posted. Well,
I will do that.
yeah,
Thank
we
you
want to
so
learn
much.
from you is what we're saying,
Thank you.
exactly.
I will be happy to share. Thank you.
Let me just see, Ziva, excuse me. Uba, Ziva, Debbie, anybody else on this item?
This is a very good report, Barbara. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you.
I don't have any question. I don't have any question, but I just want to say thank you, Barbara. This is a great report. Thank you.
And as well, and I'll just say to members of the committee, I think the opportunity to delve into this report also afforded us the chance to think through some aligned areas, certainly around economic opportunities and job development for our staff, connected to Nadia's area and to tenants as well. So thank you all. So this item, I'm happy to, it's recommended to receive the report for information. There's no formal recs. Moved by Debbie. All those in favor, opposed, if any, that carries. So the next item is the TCHC's 2023 Strategic Communications Plan update. So it's an item for information, similar to People and Culture, an update on the work of that division. I believe, Anne-Marie, you're registered to speak. You wanted to depute on this item as well? Sure, of course. So, Anne-Marie, you know the drill. You're part of our meeting, so please come back to the table. I know it seems so formal, but as you can see, we're a friendly bunch. And so, Anne-Marie, we'll turn it over to you. And then Paula, if I see you're able to join, if it's okay, after the deputation, I might ask if you want to just give us a summary in whatever manner you'd like, just at the high level on the report, and we'll take it into committee. So, Anne-Marie, welcome back. Over to you.
Okay, so I think in regards to the strategic communication, one way to get tenants, because not all tenants have access to Toronto Community Housing's website to go look at jobs, to go look at everything. They need to make it more accessible, and one way to make it more accessible would be through their newsletter that they send every year, every month or quarter, whatever they send it. It comes to every single tenant's home. So putting more information in that when it comes to really important processes and procedures of what Toronto Community Housing is doing, more tenants would be updated quicker, right? Like I said, it's 60,000 tenants. That's a lot of people. That's one way to make sure we're getting the information. And how is HR actually doing the processes and procedures? It's a separate body, and I believe that Toronto Community Housing should be having tenant complaints as a separate body. It should not be going to their managers, general managers, assistant managers. None of those people should be doing it. It should be a separate body who is unbiased. They have a proper process and procedures that tenants are going to go through, and they can actually see those processes and procedures getting done. And then at the end of it, they would have a conclusion. Okay, from your complaint, this is what's going to happen. Because when a complaint is made, I'm going to use myself as a guinea pig. When the complaint was made, the complaint was found to be true. Then they squashed it, skipped to another issue that was not relevant, ongoing, right? And then they said that, because on this digital information, right, we're talking about tenant inspections, unit inspections. Those need overhaul ASAP by individual bodies. So many tenants are getting messed up in those, right? So they said now that, I may be wrong or right, they said now that computer-generated unit inspections. I've lived in Toronto community housing maybe 30 years. I don't know, I'm aging myself, but at the end of the day, I've never heard of that. So logically, if computers are now generating unit inspections, right? You still need a human being to put all those processes and procedures into the system for the computer to spit out blah, 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 right? And additionally, if that is happening, that means superintendents are not coming into our homes anymore. They're actually just sitting at their desks or in their offices and just putting information into the system, and it spits out ABC. I don't find that logical, but the complaints, the unit inspections, those things need to be overhauled, taken out of the hands of people that are not qualified. Because when you have your own personal opinion on something, it's not going to be accurate, because everybody has their own personal opinion, right? And it doesn't give us equality. It doesn't make us feel that we're heard. Our voices are being heard. Our complaints are being heard. None of that is happening. And when it comes to human rights policies, right? How are we knowing that these individual tenants who are complaining about these human rights issues, how are they getting resolved? Where are we seeing, them being concluded that, okay, it's been resolved, this is how we handled it, and this was the
Marie,
outcome?
I don't mean to cut you off. I'm sorry. We're dealing with the strategic communications plan update here, and I know we're getting here into the tenant engagement, building condition realm. And so I wonder if we can just keep the deputation of this item, if that's possible.
I'm looking at this here. Because it says annual unit inspection. So I'm speaking in regards to these comments here, so I can comment because it's right here in your communication.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm not, you're,
in regards to
listen,
that.
we love hearing
Please.
from you. It's not to say you can't comment. We're just trying to deal with the item here.
Yeah, so I'm just trying to go through what I think there should be some issues on the pages of tenant-focused campaigns, right? That some of those tenant-focused campaigns, they should be changed and modified so that we have a voice and we could be heard in regards to those processes and procedures. And it says tenant surveys. When you're doing tenant surveys, are you putting information on those surveys that are relevant to issues that are actually occurring in our communities? No, they're not doing that, right? When it comes to tenant content strategy, so what exactly is the tenant content strategy that is being implemented that is going to benefit tenants, and how is it helping tenants when we make a complaint or we have a human rights issue or our rights have been breached? How is that being heard? How are the processes and procedures getting done? It has to have a separate individual body to adhere to that. When you're putting it in the hands of staff, that's not going to get done properly. Right? And so if like you have your strategies, you have your points here that you have made, right? The success rate, the whatever it is, but how true and accurate exactly is that, right? Because of the 60,000 tenants, a lot of us are not getting heard. A lot of complaints are not getting through.
And thank you very much. We're just over 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Just check in with members of my committee to see if we have any questions for Anne-Marie. Okay. Thank you very much, Anne-Marie.
Thank you.
So bring it into committee. Paula, I don't know if you're able, just before we dive in, to give a verbal update or or if you had a presentation, whatever you'd like. If you want to give us a high-level update on the Stratcom plan.
Yes, so through the chair, I'm actually going to invite Ada Wong, who's the Senior Director of Digital Content and Brand Strategy. She's really been the driver behind a lot of our communications and the plan that you see. So I thought it'd be really great for Ada to walk you through some some highlights of what you see in front of you. So over to you, Ada.
Thank you. And just as I pull up the presentation, I wanted to address that last comment from the deputant around communications and our role in creating that feedback loop on things we communicate about. And I wanted to say that it is a priority of ours to make sure that any communications that go out there have a mechanism to channel back comments to the appropriate business unit that is making that announcement. So if that is a feedback form or an email or a phone number, even though we're not the division necessarily best placed to respond to the issues, our role is to make sure that any feedback is communicated back and that is part of the communications campaign. So I just wanted to add that as a comment to start. And I'm wondering if I can share my screen.
We can see it.
Excellent, thank you. So just a really quick update. It's not a full update. The full plan is much longer, but I wanted to provide a few highlights on what we were doing. This is our 6-month report into the year. So at the beginning of the year, our 4 areas of focus were to define a stronger tenant focus in our communications. This includes a service focus, being impactful and also inspirational. We want to have a digital first approach. So this is using tools and digital tools to continue to engage tenants and supporting business units to develop, implement, and use digital-friendly channels for communications. We have a focus on storytelling, so making sure that our story and TCHC's image and reputation is strong. What are the amazing things that we are doing across our organization? We're also supporting and collaborating with people and culture to attract new talent. And finally, the celebration of staff and their roles and their importance in the organization. This speaks a little bit to Barbara's earlier presentation about staff engagement and employee engagement, and recognizing that communications has a strong role to play in supporting that work. So looking at some of the tenant focused campaigns that we delivered, we really worked on several fronts to collaborate with different business units across the organization to deliver timely campaigns on key issues that tenants are looking to receive updates about. So our annual unit inspections was a full communications campaign. It went out to every single household, and it really kicked off the inspection process in terms of notifying tenants and making sure they're aware of what the process looks like, how it happens, and we do this on an annual basis. We've supported with the human rights policy and procedure update communications, making sure that tenants are well informed, that our stakeholders and everyone who is interested in this process is well informed. We have an ongoing campaign with our conservation unit to promote the use of utilities, or the more efficient use of utilities, keeping waste disposal and other conservation issues top of mind for our tenants. And then finally, another sample is our tenant survey that is currently in our inboxes, in the mailboxes for tenants. And this is a every household-wide survey that is quite impactful in terms of gathering data, including service, maintenance, all the issues that are important to tenants. We will be asking questions around that, and also building demographic data about our tenants. We have built in an engagement and information focus in some of the campaigns that we run as well. And this is really to make sure that tenants are aware of the opportunities they have to reach out to us and to engage back with us. And here's just a few samples of how we're delivering engagement tools, as well as information about what we offer to tenants. An overview of our tenant publications. We have established 3 channels of communication. Our first print publication that was been mentioned a few times in this meeting is our Tenant Loop publication. It does go out quarterly to all of our households. And it is a very reliable source in terms of delivering notices, delivering important updates. We know it reaches everyone. Our tenant bulletin is an email bulletin. It's about 5,500 subscribed tenants, very high open rate and a very high click-through rate. It doesn't look high, but based on the industry benchmark, it is actually significantly above average. So we have a very engaged group online. It is small, but growing steadily. And we also recently started a tenant engagement leadership newsletter. So this is a special newsletter just for elected tenant representatives and building leaders. They have a unique role to play in our communities to support with communicating or rolling out any other engagement opportunities, information about our programs. And we message to them slightly differently in that they are ambassadors for some of our work and also ambassadors for their communities. So we want to make sure that they have a unique channel of communication. Our new TCHC website, we did report on this earlier this year, but we do have now a solid 6 months of data from launch. The success of the new site is significant. We've got 75% increase in terms of visitors per month compared to last year at the same time. So this is comparing an old website that was in place in 2022 with our new website that's in place now in 2023. This is also exciting to us, mainly because we are seeing action on pages specific to tenants and things that they're looking for. So prospective tenants continues to be a high search, contacting us for service and our tenant service hubs. And tenants are also now using the site to look up things like jobs, cleaning, parking, heating, so very detailed and operations-focused items, and they're able to find that information. We also have a governance tool installed to ensure accessibility compliance on an ongoing basis, and this will be important as we continue to grow the site for various digital uses. Just really quickly on our social media growth, it's steady at 13 to 18% year over year. So this continues to be an important channel for tenant communications, but also stakeholder relations and overall engagement with partners and other agencies in the community. It is a critical tool for us to reach a large audience right away with our news, our story, and our communications. And this growth is excellent for year over year. We are going to seek to maintain this in the next few years. But we're also at the same time looking at more targeted campaigns for specific types of tenants to make sure that we're not, we're reaching, the right audience. Overall on our media, we in the past 6 months have focused on pitching successful stories or successful features with different members of our organization. So with this story, we received coverage with the CBC, and this was the story covering a new basketball court launch in Alex Park. It was highly successful. It also had some Raptors participate. And it's just one sample of the overall media pitch approach that the team has taken. Another story that was pitched was a story about the Regent Park Revitalization Project. And the Regent Park story actually has received multiple pieces of coverage over the past few months. And this is just one sample where it highlighted TCHC's choice of architects for phase 4 and 5. So this was all excellent news in profiling the success of our organization in this area. In terms of preparing for crisis, the organization and our team works really closely with responding under pressure, responding to issues under pressure. And this first half of 2023, we've, in strategic communications, focused on a team response to on-call issues. So we've developed an ongoing on-call schedule for issues management. We've worked closely with CSU to develop a shared process for critical incident notifications. And we've also run a series of tabletop discussions within our own team to make sure that we are responding well across all channels. And then the final section is really a focus on strengthening employee communications and strategy around employee communications. So with this team, we looked at launching a momentum campaign, and the campaign really is dedicated to engaging staff remotely, frontline, and also at the executive and leadership level with messages about organizational direction and making sure that everyone is aware of where we're going and the successes the organization has. So with the arrival of Tom as our CEO, we did introduce a series of videos that profiles his perspective on leadership and also his perspective on various TCHC issues. And this really just brings to life leadership. It brings a point of connection digitally to a remote and otherwise expansive workforce. And then finally, last slide, we are making a conscious effort to use our internal communications to better profile the work and let staff know why they should be proud to work here. And this, of course, supports with both recruitment and also retention on an ongoing basis. So some stories that we highlighted through this campaign included our Globe and Mail coverage about the new architects. We also profiled the important role of TCHC and Mayor Chow's affordable housing targets. and also an end of summer snapshot highlighting all of the tenant employee activities that took place. And the final message is just to all of the tenants, individuals, employees, and partners that really shared their stories with us this past year. We recognize that we can't do our work without collaboration with them. So thank you to that.
Thank you, Ada. Let me bring it into committee for any questions or comments. And if it's okay, I might kick off. And Ada, thank you for the comprehensive presentation. Do we do, and I'm curious, whether this is forecast for the future or if it's part of the past, do we have scheduled any qualitative or quantitative market research related to our brand position, whether that's at the internal level within our tenants, but also at the external level? Just understanding that you've summarized a tremendous amount of work, internal and external, across the communications, and I just want to understand the market research so that we can track how it's affecting our perceived brand and reputation.
Absolutely. I'm really glad that you asked that question. So Paula, if it's okay, I'll jump in. Okay, perfect. So we conducted a series of focus groups in 2022, focusing specifically on the question of brand. And what we found was that our brand is just intricately tied with tenant service and operational tenant communications. And that initial focus group session really told us that we have just as much work to do to support our business units to deliver impactful communications as we do from a pure brand reputational management perspective. And so our focus is to bring up and partner with business units that are delivering tenant communications, and through those channels, establishing a level of professionalism, consistency in voice, consistency in branding and image and visuals, and through those campaigns, improve our brand. We are planning to re-measure with that group in the next year. I've got something planned for 2024. At the same time, one of the follow-up items we picked up from that series of focus groups was a larger look at customer experience and tenant experience in terms of a service delivery perspective. Mm-hmm. And we're doing some starting work from an operations perspective and working with our operations colleagues in that area. So brand, unfortunately, at a TCHC space is not straight and simple and straightforward. We are tied really closely with our business and the actual operational business. And that is what we're working through.
No, and then listen.
I'll just add, yeah, oh, sorry. Yeah. I can just add one thing, Joe, for you to consider as well. At the end of the year, we typically provide a report on sentiment. So in all the media that we receive externally, either through our own proactive activities or media that's received as a result of an incident, for example, we have an external organization look at that and provide us with guidance in terms of how that's landed from a neutral, balanced to negative perspective. And we report that back to the board as well.
No, and listen, and thank you, Paula and Ada, for both of that. I think, on the qualitative side of the research focused on our community, it makes total sense. The more we support our community, the better we deliver on our core mandate, the better we are perceived, right? The better job we do, the better the better we're perceived. So and then Paula, on the quantitative side, yeah, I'll look for that, because it appears to me, and the report speaks to it, but there's been a lot of proactive external work done. And I would just be curious on an ongoing monitoring basis. I mean, there is, from an external agency side, we can look at sentiment associated with coverage, but I would be a deeper dive at the quantitative market research side from the external perception of us. But that will all come, because I say that because I think there's a lot of good work here done, and I'd love to be able to test how it's resonating.
No, and actually, just one other item that I'll add is on the, we also have questions for that within our tenant engagement survey. So from the tenant perspective, that's in market right now. And we do list out the different communications. So that will be a really good indicator for us, especially because we had a survey in 2021. So we'll be able to measure based on, we had a benchmark then, and now we'll be able to see whether we've made progress as well. So we'll be able to share that obviously in the year-end report that we do.
Great. Thank you. Sorry to go on a little long there. Ziva.
Firstly, I have to say that the website looks phenomenal. I remember how the website looked back in the day, and it was hurting my eyes. So I love the new, I guess, facelift of the website. I would say that I do receive the tenant loops personally, and it definitely highlights overall what TCHC, what we're doing here. I just have a few questions for you. So in the past, we did have deputations in regards to the minute takings and all that stuff. How is it being logged on the website? So the website has been updated aesthetically. Has the website been updated content-wide to make sure that we have updates with, I'm just looking at my notes. So people said that there was duplications of titles when it comes to our meeting minutes. Has that been updated on the website?
Thank you for the question, Director Ferreira, and through the chair, I can advise that we are continuing to do to address the content that we have in relation to the board and committee meeting processes. And I understand that in the context of concerns that were previously raised with the board by some deputants about access to historical board and committee meeting materials, that we've taken steps in order to return much of that material to the website so that it continues to be available to tenants and others who are interested in accessing that documentation.
All right, thank you for that. In regards to the tenant loop, though, I just have some questions on how information is being disseminated because the deputant today talked about how some people are not receiving this information. So with TCHC, I guess my question is, how do we, is everything mailed out to TCHC residents? Like, how is everyone receiving information from one community to the next?
I can address the question, Ziva. We are, with Tenant Loop, it goes out quarterly. It's mailed to every single household via Canada Post. It is the single point of communication that we use for everything that has to reach everyone. We know that digital and social has a more limited audience, but our print communication is a key piece for us to reach everyone. And I do believe the deputant said that it reaches everyone. I think her suggestions were around how we can improve some of those communications.
Okay. And lastly, I know that language is a barrier for some people when it comes to reading TCHC information. I guess moving forward, do you think that you all will be addressing some of those language barriers, like maybe having the information in different languages?
That's great. I'm glad you asked the question. So digitally online, the progress in Google Translate, so being able to translate right away online digital materials to multiple languages it's a feature that is available. We have a by request only translation for Tenant Loop, and we do receive a number of requests. I believe standardly at least 5 or 6 language translations are requested per edition. So that is something that's available in each edition if you do need a translation and it's written out in that language. If you do need a translation, please reach out and we will arrange for one to be sent to you.
Sounds good. Thank you.
If I can just add, and I think you may have said this, Ada, on our website too, there's one button that you can click and it will actually translate the entire website into the language of your choice. And I can't remember how many languages are up there, Ada, but it's really effective in terms of being able to make the website content available in multiple languages based on people's choice.
Ada, how do tenants know that they can have the print version of the newsletter translated into non-English? into languages other than English?
So there's a page, yeah, there's a page in Tenant Loop, and I believe we have at least 10 languages that says the sentence, if you require this publication in your language, if that's French or another language, it'll say it in French. And then there's an email that they can connect with or a phone number that they can connect.
And once you receive that request, then does every subsequent newsletter go out to that household in that language? Or do they have to request it every quarter?
I believe we have an ongoing list of regular tenants, but we do it on a request basis based on budget constraints.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? And I'll leave that, Ada, with Paula. First of all, a tremendous thank you for the presentation, and also and members of the committee for the discussion and some points of feedback and around the ongoing reputation analysis, and also some feedback around the multilingual options and how we can continue to make that more accessible. And so we'll leave that with you to take back, but thank you. So do we have a motion to receive this report for information? Moved by Debbie, thank you. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, carried. Members of the committee, we're going to the last item in public. I'm very conscious. We're then going to go into camera after this item, and we have a couple items we have to deal with, but I'm conscious of quorum, so I just wanted to do a time check. We'll take a brief facilities break after this item before we go in private. Uba, Ziva, and Debbie, is there a hard stop? 11:30, Ziva and Uba, are you both okay till 11:30?
Yeah.
I could push to 11:15, but not 11:30.
So 11:15. So I'll do that. Uba, would 11:15 work for you?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll just seek to manage the clock and time check. We're going to do one more public item, then we're going to go into camera, and we have a couple items we need to finish, and I'll make sure we're done by 11:15. Thank you kindly for being prepared to extend. My apologies to members of the staff team for also the request to extend. All right, our final item here is on the public agenda, City Council directions requiring board attention. It's an information item. Anne-Marie, you had registered to depute on this. Did you want to speak on this item? Yeah, okay. Anne-Marie, welcome. I'll invite you back to the table, and you'll have 5 minutes, and you can begin when you're ready. Welcome, Anne-Marie. Over to you.
Thank you. So just to begin, the revitalization project, some of our communities in the West End still need a huge part of their community to be revitalized. There's some, like in the West End in my community, parts have been done and other parts have not been done, and it's been many, many years. And when we're talking about the capital funding that comes into Toronto Community Housing, I'm not quite sure when that's going to be re-implemented in regards to community and doing capital projects, because there's some community that is in desperate need of that process to get done. So if we can have some type of update in our newsletters when it comes out quarterly on what community is going to be next, or usually at our rep meetings, we have conversation about capital funding. What can we put in capital funding in regards to our communities? And I was just wondering if that process is coming back anytime soon, or could it be mid-year next year sometime when we can see implementations on those things? It would be great to get an update on that. The next process would be the ombudsman's process. It'd be good if we can have information in the newsletter in regards to that. So tenants, like I said, it's 60,000 tenants across the corporation, and we can have some information, because when one level is not existing or it's not working, then if we need to go to the next level, the ombudsman process would be good to have in our newsletter to talk about processes and procedures and how that is done and implemented, and how the overall look of that process is done, because some of us are not so, how can I say, forthcoming when it comes to understanding certain information. It just goes over their head. So if it could be like broken down to them in a basic level, because like I said, everybody has different educational levels. So for the other tenants that really want to do that process, it'll be good for it to break down simply, maybe on your website and in your newsletter. That would be a good idea. Any questions?
No? No, and thank you as well. You had heard us that we're managing a clock, so thank you
Yes,
as well
thank
for the
you.
abridged version on that
Yes.
presentation. We're grateful for that
Thank
too.
you.
You're a part of the
Thank you.
team now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anne-Marie.
Thank you so much.
All right, we'll bring it into committee. Let me just see, are there any questions on the city council directions requiring board attention or conversation on this item? Okay. Seeing none, I'm happy to, I'll move the recommendation. It's an information report, so to receive it. All those in favor, opposed, if any, carries. Okay, so colleagues, that concludes the public portion of the agenda. Can I just get a confirmation? So for members of the committee, do we just stay in this link? Or do we, yeah, so Uba and Ziva, if you want to stay in this link, it's 10:36. Is 5 minutes enough time for a brief health break? All right, so let's reconvene in 5 and we'll start the in-camera session. So thank you, and thank you to members of the public who tuned in.